Amelia gazed at her reflection, the pristine white of her wedding gown shimmering under the soft light. Delicate, sparkling beads adorned the fabric, catching the light like tiny stars. Her hair, meticulously styled, framed a face lightly touched with makeup, just enough, she thought, to lend a subtle glow. She looked every inch the radiant bride, the woman poised to begin her happily ever after. But beneath the surface, a disquieting unease gnawed at her. Her heart felt leaden, a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. She attempted a smile, but it felt forced, the corners of her mouth lifting without engaging the depths of her eyes. Grace, her dearest friend since childhood, approached, her face beaming. "Amelia, you look absolutely breathtaking, like a queen from a fairy tale." Amelia managed a weak smile in return. "Thank you, Grace." Grace, ever perceptive, narrowed her eyes, studying Amelia's face. "Are you all right? You seem distant." Amelia took a deliberate breath, trying to compose herself. "I think so. Just wedding jitters, I guess." But it was a carefully constructed half-truth. She felt far from ready, a sensation that went beyond mere nerves. She and Daniel hadn't known each other long, a few fleeting months. He was undeniably charming, intelligent, and seemed to always know exactly what to say. When he proposed, she'd hesitated, a seed of doubt already planted. Her mother, however, had been adamant. "Good men don't grow on trees, Amelia. You're not getting any younger, you need to settle down." So she'd said yes, bowing to pressure and the perceived ticking clock. Now, adorned in this exquisite dress, moments away from walking down the aisle, her heart remained stubbornly unconvinced. Grace, sensing her distress, offered a glass of water. "It's just pre-wedding anxiety. Every bride goes through it." Amelia nodded, clinging to the plausible explanation. "Yeah, maybe." But deep down, a persistent feeling refused to be silenced, a nagging sense that something was profoundly amiss. Her fiancé, Daniel, hadn't been born into wealth. He came from a modest, middle-class background much like her own. But in recent years, a dramatic shift had occurred. Daniel had become rich, undeniably, conspicuously rich. He vaguely attributed his fortune to the tech world, some online venture that had taken off. No one, it seemed, truly grasped the specifics of his work, but the evidence of his success was undeniable. A sleek, expensive car, a newly acquired house in an upscale neighborhood, designer clothes. His mother, Margaret, reveled in his newfound success. She carried herself with an almost regal air, constantly reminding anyone who would listen that Daniel was now one of the town's top young men, a self-made success story. And because of that, she believed Daniel deserved a partner who matched his elevated status. From the very beginning, Amelia sensed Margaret's disapproval. She was met with forced smiles and subtle, yet barbed, comments. Nothing overtly rude, nothing she could readily call out in front of others, but the words still managed to wound. "She seems nice enough," Margaret had once said, her smile strained. "But I just hope she can adapt to this lifestyle. Daniel's world is different now, you know." And it didn't stop there. Amelia vividly recalled the day her family met Daniel's. She'd worn a vibrant, colorful dress, a reflection of the joyous spirit her family embodied. Her family had come bearing gifts, their voices filled with song and laughter. They danced, sang, and celebrated their heritage, their roots. Amelia's father delivered a heartfelt speech, her mother beaming with pride. Daniel's family, however, sat stiff and silent, a study in restrained disapproval. They whispered amongst themselves, Margaret's expression a mask of thinly veiled disdain. Later, Amelia had overheard her speaking to two women from her side. "She's sweet, I suppose," Margaret had conceded. "But it's clear she comes from a different kind of home. Their ways are not like ours. That's what happens when you marry outside your own circle." One of the women nodded in agreement, her voice laced with disdain. "Yes, so loud. This isn't how we do things. It's all a bit unrefined. I'm not sure she quite fits. She'll have to learn," Margaret had added, her tone dismissive, Daniel needs someone who matches his level now, not someone he has to carry. He could have had any girl from our circle. She is lucky he chose her. Amelia had stood nearby, hidden from view, her breath caught in her throat. Her eyes burned, her heart fracturing a little more with each word. That night she had confided in Daniel. "She doesn't mean it like that," Daniel had said quickly, avoiding her gaze. "My mom just worries about what, Daniel? That I'm not rich enough? That my family doesn't measure up to yours?" Daniel sighed heavily, glancing at his phone. "Just let it go, Amelia, please. We're almost at the wedding. Can't we just not do this now?" He never defended her, not once. In the days leading up to the wedding, Amelia felt Daniel slipping further and further away. He stopped calling as often, and when she did manage to reach him, he was curt, distracted, always in a rush, always handling something. She desperately tried to convince herself that he was simply stressed, that once the wedding was over, things would return to normal. But deep down, she knew something was fundamentally wrong, and no one seemed willing to acknowledge it. Amelia stood by the door of her room, the moment of truth rapidly approaching. It was almost time to walk into the event hall and begin the ceremony. Her heart pounded in her chest, her palms slick with sweat. Grace had just left to oversee the flower girls, leaving Amelia alone with her turbulent thoughts. She took a deep breath, reaching for the door handle. As she stepped out into the hallway, she heard voices coming from around the corner. Two men were speaking in hushed tones. She recognized one of them, one of Daniel's groomsmen. The other voice was unfamiliar, older, and vaguely unsettling. "She's pretty enough," the older man said, his voice low and gravelly. "Yeah," the groomsman replied, a hint of cynicism in his tone. "But you know Daniel. He's not really ready to settle down. He just wants to look responsible. He says this girl, Amelia, is the perfect pick. Conservative, quiet, won't poke her nose where it doesn't belong." The older man chuckled, a harsh, mirthless sound. "Exactly what he needs." "Precisely," the groomsman confirmed. "Once this is done, they'll back off." Amelia froze, her heart plummeting. What were they talking about? Who were they? And why would Daniel say such things about her? She retreated silently, backing away before they could spot her. She desperately tried to dismiss it as mere gossip, some twisted male banter. Daniel wouldn't say those things. Would he? She didn't fully understand the implications, but it felt profoundly wrong, deeply disturbing. A few minutes later, the music began to swell, the signal that the ceremony was about to commence. The doors opened, and everyone rose to their feet. Amelia walked down the aisle, a sea of faces blurring around her. The room was filled with people, yet it felt strangely empty. Some guests offered polite smiles, but many of Daniel's family members looked away, their expressions cold and distant. Margaret, in particular, remained impassive, her face a blank canvas. Daniel stood at the altar, a figure of polished perfection in his impeccably tailored suit. He looked handsome, but there was no joy in his eyes, no spark of anticipation. He didn't look at Amelia until she stood directly in front of him, and when he finally did, it wasn't with love or tenderness. It was as if he were assessing her, taking stock. "You look good," he said softly, his voice devoid of emotion. "Thank you," Amelia whispered, struggling to keep her voice from trembling. The ceremony began, the pastor's words washing over her in a meaningless drone. The vows were recited, but Amelia felt detached, as if she were watching herself from a distance, a stranger in her own life. Then came the part Amelia had been both anticipating and dreading. "Now," the pastor announced, "the couple will jump the broom." Amelia turned to Daniel, offering a tentative smile. "It's a tradition in my family. We've done it for generations." Daniel glanced at the broom placed before them, his expression a mixture of disdain and impatience. "I'm not doing that." Amelia's face fell, the blood draining from her cheeks. "Why not? It means a lot to me." "It looks silly," Daniel said dismissively, not even bothering to lower his voice. "We don't need to do all this backward stuff." "It's not silly," Amelia said quietly, her voice trembling but firm. "It's part of my culture, my heritage. My parents, my grandparents, they all did this. It's important to me." Daniel shook his head, his jaw tightening. "Let's just move on. This isn't the time for this kind of thing." The pastor looked uncomfortable, unsure of how to proceed. Guests whispered amongst themselves, a ripple of unease spreading through the room. Amelia stood frozen, her heart breaking silently. In that moment, a profound realization washed over her. He didn't respect her, not her family, not her culture, not her. But a small, insidious voice whispered in her ear, urging her to be reasonable, to not overreact. "He doesn't mean it that way," it pleaded. After what felt like an eternity, the awkward moment passed, and the ceremony concluded. They all moved to the reception hall, the tension hanging heavy in the air. The reception hall was a spectacle of opulent beauty. Golden lights cascaded from the ceiling, illuminating tables overflowing with flowers. The air was thick with the scent of roses and expensive perfume. Music played softly in the background, and guests laughed and clinked glasses. But Amelia felt like an imposter, a stranger in a world that wasn't her own. She stood near the entrance, watching everyone, feeling utterly disconnected. People approached to offer hugs, congratulations, and posed for pictures, but none of it felt genuine. None of it touched the hollowness inside. Daniel was across the room, near the bar, engaged in hushed conversation with the same older man she had overheard before the ceremony. The man who had said Daniel just wanted to look responsible. Every time Amelia glanced his way, Daniel was on his phone, texting, checking something, laughing quietly. Not once did he turn to acknowledge her, to reassure her, to simply connect. Grace came over, handing Amelia a glass of champagne. "You okay? You seem lost." Amelia gave a weak smile, the weight of her unhappiness threatening to overwhelm her. "I feel like I don't belong here." Before Grace could respond, the DJ tapped the microphone, his voice booming through the hall. "Everyone, please welcome the groom's mother, Margaret, for a few words." Margaret rose slowly, holding her glass of wine. Her smile was wide and practiced, but her eyes were sharp and calculating. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on her. "I just want to thank everyone for coming today," she began, her voice smooth and confident. "Today is a special day. My son, Daniel, has always been a man of vision, a hard worker, a builder, and now he has taken another bold step." She turned slightly, directing her gaze toward Amelia, her smile tightening. "It takes strength and courage to marry someone from a different background, someone with different customs. But Daniel has always had a generous heart. He's always been open-minded, willing to give others a chance, even when they come from worlds far removed from his own." A pregnant pause hung in the air. The room was silent, the guests shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Amelia felt her chest constrict, her throat going dry. She looked at Daniel, pleading with her eyes for him to say something, anything. But he just stared at his glass, silent and impassive. He didn't look up, he didn't defend her. He simply allowed his mother to utter those thinly veiled insults in front of everyone. The applause was sparse, a smattering of polite claps, mostly swallowed by the oppressive silence. Grace reached out and squeezed Amelia's hand, a gesture of silent support. Amelia squeezed back, clinging to it as a lifeline, desperate to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. She had never felt more alone. The wedding cake stood tall and imposing in the center of the hall, a four-tiered confection of smooth white icing adorned with delicate gold lines and soft pink flowers. A small crowd gathered around as the music softened and the lights dimmed, signaling that it was time for the cake cutting. Amelia stood beside Daniel, forcing a smile for the cameras. But her heart was heavy. Her cheeks ached from the forced expressions. Her chest felt tight from suppressing so many emotions. Then Daniel's cousin, Lillian, seized the microphone. Lillian, the baker of the cake, wore a bright green dress and an air of smug satisfaction. She cleared her throat and surveyed the crowd, her smile wide and artificial. "I just want to say how proud I am to be part of this beautiful celebration," she announced. "This cake, like this marriage, is built on love, support, and family." People nodded, their faces reflecting polite agreement. Then her voice shifted, taking on a sharper edge. "Some families give gifts, some help with the planning, and some just show up to enjoy. But hey," she added, her smile turning sardonic, "we all play our part, right?" A few people laughed nervously, the sound brittle and uncomfortable. Others looked away, their faces betraying their unease. Amelia froze, the words striking her like a physical blow. She looked around, her eyes darting from face to face. Whispers erupted, the air thick with unspoken judgment. Her family, her parents, they had tried their best. They had given what they could, love, not money. And now they were being mocked for it, for everyone to witness. Amelia turned to Daniel, her voice low and trembling. "Did you hear that?" Daniel avoided her gaze, his jaw clenched tight. "It's nothing, Amelia. Just a joke." "No, it's not," Amelia insisted, her voice rising. "It was disrespectful, and you're just going to let her say that?" Daniel sighed, his frustration evident. "Can we not do this here? You're making a scene." Amelia stepped back, her voice laced with disbelief. "A scene? Your mother insulted me, your cousin mocks my family, and you say I'm making a scene? I'm tired of this, Daniel." Daniel put down his drink, his face hardening. "Stop it, Amelia. This isn't the time." "No," Amelia said, her voice louder now, fueled by years of suppressed anger and hurt. "If you won't do anything, then I will. I will not keep letting your family humiliate me." Before she could finish her sentence, Daniel's hand shot out, his palm connecting with her cheek with a sickening thud. "Enough!" Daniel shouted, the sound echoing through the stunned silence of the hall. The music stopped abruptly, the joyful atmosphere shattered. People gasped, their faces a mixture of shock and horror. Amelia stood frozen, her hand instinctively rising to her burning cheek. It stung not just from the physical impact of the slap, but from the profound shame and betrayal. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She looked at Daniel, his face pale and contorted with shock at his own actions. She looked at the guests, every eye fixed on her, dissecting her pain. She took a step back, then turned to face the crowd, her voice remarkably steady despite the turmoil raging inside her. "This wedding is over," she declared. Her cheek burned, her heart pounded in her chest, the silence in the hall so thick it felt suffocating. Everyone stared, their mouths agape, their eyes wide with disbelief. Some guests had already reached for their phones, eager to document the unfolding drama. Daniel simply stood there, frozen in place. He didn't move, he didn't reach for her, he didn't even utter a word of apology. And that, more than anything, told Amelia everything she needed to know. She turned and walked purposefully toward the DJ's stand, her head held high. The man looked hesitant, unsure of what to do. Amelia held out her hand, her gaze unwavering. "Give me the mic," she commanded, her voice calm and resolute. He handed it to her without a word. She turned to face the crowd, the people who had smiled at her, clapped for her, and now sat paralyzed with shock. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she was about to do. "I should have walked away sooner," she began, her voice clear and strong, cutting through the silence like a knife. "I should have listened to the feeling in my chest, the voice in my heart. But I didn't. I ignored every sign, every insult, every cold look." Her voice didn't waver, not even slightly. "I thought love meant staying, that being a good woman meant keeping quiet. I was wrong." She looked directly at Daniel, her gaze unwavering. He still didn't speak, he didn't move. "I want every woman watching me now to hear this. You are not here to be silent. You are not here to be stepped on. You are not here to please someone who doesn't value you. Walk away before it's too late." She slipped off her wedding ring, holding it in her palm for a brief moment, then placed it deliberately on the table beside her. "I choose me. I choose peace. I choose freedom." The hall remained deathly silent. Then, She handed the microphone back to the DJ and walked out, her head held high, her back ramrod straight. She didn't cry, not yet. Outside the doors, the cool night air hit her face like a cleansing balm. Her heels clicked sharply against the pavement as she walked toward the parking lot. "Amelia!" Grace called, running to catch up with her. Amelia stopped, turning to face her friend. Grace wrapped her arms around her tightly, her voice choked with emotion. "You're so strong, Amelia. I'm so proud of you." Then Amelia's mother appeared, her eyes brimming with tears. "My daughter," she said softly, reaching out to hold her close. "You did the right thing. Let's go home." Amelia nodded, her body still trembling, but a sense of profound relief washing over her. She knew she was safe now. Safe from them, safe from him, and finally undeniably free. Later that night, Amelia sat curled up on Grace's couch, wrapped in a soft blanket. Her wedding dress was gone, replaced by one of Grace's old t-shirts and a pair of loose trousers. Her hair was disheveled, her face bare of makeup, but for the first time in hours, she felt a measure of peace. Grace brought her a warm cup of tea and sat beside her, offering a comforting presence. "You don't have to talk, just rest." Amelia nodded, her body exhausted, her heart even more so. Then her phone buzzed incessantly, a relentless barrage of notifications. She ignored it, not wanting to hear from anyone. Not now. But then Grace's phone started to ring, followed by another series of buzzes. A message popped up on the screen. Grace picked it up, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Oh my God, Amelia." Amelia turned to her, her curiosity piqued. "What is it, Grace?" "It's everywhere," Grace whispered, her voice trembling. She turned the screen toward Amelia. There it was, the horrifying reality laid bare. A video clip of the slap, the stunned silence, Amelia taking the microphone, her impassioned speech, the moment she walked away. It had been posted on every major social media platform, shared by countless blogs, influencers, and news outlets. Millions of views. The internet had exploded with outrage. Comments poured in, a tidal wave of support and condemnation. "This is heartbreaking. She deserves so much better. He hit her in public, imagine what he's like in private. That speech, that strength. I'm crying. Expose this man." Amelia sat back, numb with shock. Her private pain had become the world's story, a spectacle for public consumption. Across town, Daniel's name was trending, but not in the way he had always envisioned. The man who once bragged about his pristine image was now being branded a coward, an abuser, a fraud. TV reporters picked up the story, bloggers posted detailed timelines of events, and hashtags spread like wildfire. Hashtag justice for Amelia, hashtag walk away with dignity. People started digging into Daniel's past, asking questions. Who was this man? Really? What else was he hiding? Amelia didn't know whether to cry or scream. She just sat there, holding the warm mug in her hand, her eyes glued to the screen, her mind reeling. "Are you okay?" Grace asked gently, her voice filled with concern. Amelia looked up, her expression dazed. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But maybe, just maybe, this was never meant to stay hidden." A few days passed, an eternity of introspection and quiet contemplation. Amelia remained at Grace's place, seeking refuge from the storm of media attention. She needed time to breathe, to sleep, to think, to try and make sense of the cataclysm that had engulfed her life. Some days she didn't speak at all, lost in the labyrinth of her thoughts. Other days, she poured her emotions into her journal, desperately trying to piece together the shattered fragments of her reality. The internet, however, refused to let go of the story. New clips, reactions, and articles continued to surface, each one a painful reminder of her ordeal. Amelia tried to ignore most of it, but one morning, Grace burst into the living room, her phone clutched tightly in her hand, her face pale with shock. "Amelia," she said, breathless, "you need to see this." Amelia sat up slowly, her heart pounding with a sense of foreboding. "What is it, Grace?" Grace handed her the phone, her fingers trembling. The headline screamed from the screen, Breaking news. Daniel Okoro arrested in connection with major online scamming. Amelia stared at the words, her fingers going numb. She scrolled down, her eyes scanning the details. Daniel had been arrested at his home by financial crimes investigators. The report stated that he had been running a large-scale internet scam, tricking people through fake websites, fraudulent investment schemes, and identity theft. Dozens of victims. Millions of dollars. His so-called tech company, the source of his sudden wealth, was nothing more than a front, a sophisticated cover for laundering stolen money. Fake offices, paid actors, made-up clients, all of it meticulously crafted to project an image of legitimate success. And the wedding, that too was part of the elaborate charade. One line in the article struck Amelia with particular force. Asterisk sources close to the case say Daniel attempted to present himself as a stable, married man to weaken suspicion and avoid charges. Amelia dropped the phone, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place with a sickening clarity. It all made sense now. The quiet phone calls, the constant presence of that older man, his business partner, the whispered conversations she had overheard at the wedding. Asterisk, he just wants to look responsible. Once this is done, they'll back off. Asterisk, he hadn't loved her. He had used her, not just for her image, but as a shield, a pawn in his elaborate game of deception. A woman to stand beside him, quiet, loyal, and non-threatening. And when she dared to speak, when she dared to challenge his carefully constructed facade, he silenced her. Grace sat beside her, gently taking her hand, her eyes filled with compassion. "You see now," she whispered, her voice soft but firm. "This wasn't your fault, Amelia. You didn't miss something. You were played by someone dangerous." Later that day, a photo surfaced online. Margaret, Daniel's proud mother, standing outside their opulent home as police led her son away in handcuffs. Her eyes were red and swollen, her mouth a tight, grim line. For once, she had nothing to say. The woman who had once looked down on Amelia with such disdain was now being bombarded with questions by reporters, desperately hiding her face behind a scarf, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. She had told everyone that Amelia wasn't worthy, but now the world could see that the true shame belonged to her son. A week later, Amelia stood in her family's compound, the place where she had grown up, the place that represented everything Daniel and his family had scorned. The sky was soft with the warm hues of evening light, and chairs were arranged in a half circle, a symbol of unity and closure. Her uncles, aunts, cousins, and neighbors gathered quietly, their faces etched with a mixture of sorrow and support. They weren't there to celebrate a wedding. They were there to bring an end to a painful chapter. On a small tray sat the returned bride price, envelopes of money, wrapped gifts, small tokens of appreciation. All of it meticulously arranged, waiting for someone from Daniel's side to collect it, a symbolic gesture of reconciliation. But no one came. The table across from them, reserved for Daniel's family, remained empty, a stark reminder of their absence. Margaret and the rest of Daniel's family had been invited, but after the arrest, the trial, and the overwhelming shame, they chose to stay away, retreating into the shadows of their shattered lives. Daniel's case had moved swiftly. The evidence was irrefutable. Incriminating documents, damning text messages, fake company records, everything was there, laid bare for the world to see. He was found guilty on multiple counts of fraud and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Every car, house, and bank account he possessed was seized by the Financial Crimes Unit, a testament to the magnitude of his crimes. His image, once so carefully cultivated and polished, was now irreparably tarnished, forever associated with deceit and corruption. Margaret had retreated into silence, the woman who had once looked down on Amelia with such disdain now hiding from the world, her neighbors whispering behind her back, her friends avoiding her gaze. Amelia watched as her uncle stood, lifted the bride price tray, and handed it to a respected local elder. The elder nodded solemnly, acknowledging the significance of the moment, and the return was made official. No one clapped, there was no music, but there was a profound sense of peace, a collective exhale of relief. Later that night, Amelia and her mother sat outside under the sprawling branches of a mango tree, the air cool and fragrant. Her mother held her hand, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and regret. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice soft and filled with remorse. Amelia turned to her, her heart aching for her mother's pain. "For what? For rushing you, for pushing you," her mother replied, her gaze dropping to their intertwined hands. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I just wanted you to have someone to be taken care of, to be secure." "I know," Amelia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Her mother looked away, then back, her expression filled with a newfound understanding. "But I forgot that in the end, you are the one who has to live with the man, not me, not anyone else. From now on, I won't pressure you anymore. Promise." Amelia nodded, her eyes filling with tears. But this time, they were soft ones, not born of pain and despair, but of love and forgiveness. "I'll wait," her mother said, her voice filled with a quiet strength. "For the right one with you." And in that moment, Amelia felt something deep inside her begin to heal, the wounds inflicted by Daniel and his family slowly beginning to mend. She knew the scars would always be there, a reminder of the pain she had endured, but she also knew that she was stronger now, more resilient, more determined to live a life of her own choosing. It had been months since the wedding that never was, the event that had irrevocably altered the course of her life. Amelia now lived in a small but cozy apartment, not far from Grace's, a sanctuary of peace and tranquility. The walls were painted a soft, inviting yellow, the curtains light and airy, allowing the sunlight to stream in. Her days were quiet, peaceful, and filled with the gentle rhythm of healing. She was still shaken by everything that had happened, the trauma lingering in the shadows of her mind. Sometimes she woke up from vivid dreams that left her heart racing and her body trembling. Sometimes she heard echoes of the cruel, disparaging voices that had once made her feel so small and insignificant. But each morning, she reminded herself of the choice she had made, the path she had chosen. You walked away. You saved yourself. One evening, Amelia sat on her small balcony, a warm breeze rustling through her hair. In her lap lay an old, leather-bound journal, one she hadn't touched in years, a relic of a former self. She opened it slowly, her fingers tracing the worn edges of the pages, and began to write. Today I chose me, not just once but every day since I walked away. I didn't just escape a wedding. I escaped a life that would have crushed my soul, and I'm not ashamed. I'm proud. She wrote about the subtle signs she had ignored, the persistent feeling of unease she had dismissed, the quiet voice within her that she had silenced for too long. She wrote about the humiliation, the fear, the moment of shocking violence that had finally broken the spell, allowing her to see the truth. She wrote about the silence she had endured, the burden of keeping secrets, the courage it had taken to finally speak her truth. She wrote about the voice she had found again, the strength she had discovered within herself, the unwavering support of her family and friends. When she was done, she showed the pages to Grace, her closest confidant, the woman who had stood by her through thick and thin. Grace read the words in silence, her eyes filling with tears. When she finished, she looked up at Amelia, her voice filled with emotion. "Amelia," she said, her voice trembling, "this is not just a journal, this is a book." Amelia laughed, a hesitant, self-deprecating sound. "A book? You're crazy." "No, I'm serious," Grace insisted, her eyes shining with conviction. "You have no idea how many women need to hear this, Amelia. How many feel trapped, afraid, silenced. Your story can give them a way out, a reason to believe in themselves." At first, Amelia was hesitant, overwhelmed by the thought of sharing her deeply personal story with the world. But Grace persisted, gently coaxing her, reminding her of the power of her voice, the potential to inspire hope and change. Together, they typed up the pages of her journal, painstakingly crafting a narrative that was both raw and compelling. They found a publisher who believed in her message, who recognized the importance of her story. And not long after, the book came out, bearing a simple yet powerful title, I Walked Away, a true story of courage and freedom by Amelia Okoro. And it didn't take long before it became a bestseller, resonating with readers around the world. People wrote to her from every corner of the globe, sharing their own stories of struggle and resilience, offering messages of love, hope, and strength. Some said her story had saved their lives, giving them the courage to leave abusive relationships, to pursue their dreams, to finally embrace their true selves. Men and women alike, trapped in emotionally abusive marriages, began to speak up, to seek help, to break free from the chains that had bound them for so long. Amelia sat in her small, sun-drenched living room one afternoon, holding a fresh copy of her book, her name emblazoned on the cover, her truth contained within its pages. She smiled, a genuine, heartfelt expression that reached all the way to her eyes. She wasn't the girl in the wedding dress anymore, the bride who had been silenced and humiliated. She was the woman who had walked away, who had found her voice, who had inspired countless others to do the same. She consciously forged her identity, meticulously crafting herself into a beacon of hope, a woman who discovered the alchemical secret of transmuting personal anguish into a driving, unwavering purpose. She wasn't merely defined by her scars, but empowered by them, each one a testament to resilience and a catalyst for positive change in the world around her. It wasn't fate, you understand, but a deliberate act of will, a decision to rise from the ashes,